You sit down to trade. You tell yourself you're here to execute your strategy, follow your rules, manage risk, be disciplined. But that's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is you're trying to avoid pain. Every decision you make, every entry you take, every exit you choose, every trade you skip is driven by one thing: avoiding the discomfort of being wrong. You're not trading to make money. You're trading to protect your ego from feeling inadequate. And the market is exposing that every single day. This is why you move your stop. Not because the trade needs more room, because taking the loss now feels unbearable. This is why you exit winners early. Not because you're managing risk, because holding through discomfort feels too dangerous. This is why you skip valid setups, not because they're not good enough, because executing while uncertain feels too exposing. You're not executing a trading strategy. You're executing an emotional survival strategy. And until you see that, until you admit that, you'll keep wondering why discipline feels impossible. Because it's not discipline you're fighting. It's the terror of feeling wrong. Let me show you what's happening under the surface. You see your setup. Your system says execute. But before you click, something happens. A feeling. Subtle, but powerful. What if this one fails? What if I'm wrong again? What if I lose money and feel stupid? That feeling isn't about the trade. It's about what the trade means if it fails. Because to you, a losing trade isn't just a statistical outcome. It's evidence. Evidence that you're not good at this, that you don't belong here, that maybe you're wasting your time. And your brain will do anything to avoid collecting that evidence. So instead of executing, you hesitate. You check one more time frame. You wait for extra confirmation. You tell yourself you're being careful. But you're not being careful. You're delaying the moment when you have to face the possibility that you might be wrong. And if you can delay long enough, maybe the setup will prove itself first. Maybe price will move and you'll feel safer. Maybe you won't have to risk finding out you failed. That's not trading. That's emotional survival. Here's the pattern you're trapped in. Your brain has categorized trading outcomes into two groups. Wins equals I'm competent. I'm safe. I'm on the right path. Losses equals I'm inadequate. I'm failing. I shouldn't be doing this. And once your brain has made that categorization, every trade becomes an existential event. Not, will this trade work? But, will this trade prove I'm capable? And you can't execute probabilistically when every trade is tied to your self-worth. This is why you can know your strategy works and still not execute it consistently, because execution requires accepting that you'll be wrong 40 to 50% of the time. And if being wrong means you're inadequate, then being wrong 40 to 50% of the time is intolerable. So your brain finds ways to avoid it. Move the stop. Avoid the immediate pain of being wrong. Exit early. Lock in proof you were right before the market can reverse. Skip the trade. Don't collect data that might confirm you're failing. None of this is strategy. It's all survival. And here's what makes this so dangerous. These survival behaviors feel like good trading. Moving your stop feels like giving the trade more room. Exiting early feels like taking profit while it's there. Skipping trades feels like waiting for better setups. You've rationalized emotional survival as prudent risk management. And as long as you believe that story, you'll never fix the real problem. Mark Douglas saw this in every struggling trader he worked with. He called it the need for emotional certainty. Traders weren't seeking profitable outcomes. They were seeking emotional safety. They needed to feel safe before executing. They needed to feel right before committing. They needed to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. And trading doesn't offer that. Trading offers probability, and probability guarantees discomfort. But traders in phase one can't accept that because discomfort feels like danger. So they spend all their energy trying to avoid discomfort instead of executing their system. And the system doesn't work, not because it's broken, but because it's not being executed. Here's what you're not seeing. Every time you prioritize feeling safe over executing correctly, you're training your brain that safety matters more than the system. And the more you reinforce that, the harder it becomes to execute when you don't feel safe, which is most of the time, because the market rarely feels safe. So you end up in a loop. You only execute when conditions feel comfortable. But comfortable conditions are rare, so you barely execute at all. And you wonder why you're not making progress. It's not the strategy. It's that you're letting emotional survival override execution. Here's the truth you need to face. You're not protecting your capital. You're protecting your self-image. Every time you move a stop, you're saying, I can't handle being wrong right now. Every time you exit early, you're saying, I need proof I was right before the market takes it away. Every time you skip a trade, you're saying, I'd rather avoid the possibility of failure than execute my edge. None of that is about money. It's all about ego. Let me make this visceral. Imagine you're watching someone else trade your strategy. They take every setup. They never move stops. They hold to target regardless of discomfort. Some trades win, some lose, but over 100 trades, they're profitable because the edge plays out. Now imagine you're executing that same strategy. You take some setups, skip others, move stops when it feels right, exit early when you're anxious. Your results? Inconsistent. Break even at best. Same strategy. Different executor. Different results. The difference isn't skill. It's that the other trader isn't using the market to manage their self-worth. They don't need each trade to prove they're competent. They don't avoid setups to protect their ego. They don't modify execution to feel safe. They just execute the system. Because the system is separate from their identity. But you? Every trade is personal. Every loss is evidence. Every decision is filtered through how will this make me feel? And that's why you're stuck. Here's what's actually happening. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for threat detection, has categorized trading losses as threats. Not financial threats. Psychological threats. If I lose, I'll feel inadequate. And inadequacy is dangerous. So every time you see a setup, your amygdala scans for threat. Will this trade make me feel inadequate? And if the answer is maybe, it triggers avoidance behavior. Hesitation. Extra analysis. Seeking confirmation. Anything to delay or avoid the threat. This isn't conscious. You don't think I'm avoiding because my amygdala is activated? You just feel uncomfortable. And you call that discomfort intuition or caution? But it's neither. It's your nervous system trying to protect you from emotional pain. And as long as your nervous system treats trading losses as threats, you'll keep engaging in survival behavior instead of executing your system. This is phase one. This is the mechanical stage. You're not executing automatically. You're not thinking probabilistically. You're not separating identity from outcomes. You're in emotional survival mode. Every trade feels significant. Every loss feels threatening. Every decision is contaminated by the need to avoid pain. And you can't skip this phase. You have to work through it. The screen becomes a mirror. Every time you move a stop to avoid discomfort, it shows you You're prioritizing emotional safety over system execution. Every time you exit early because holding feels scary, it shows you you're managing feelings, not managing risk. Every time you skip a valid setup because it doesn't feel right, it shows you your amygdala has veto power over your strategy. And until you see that pattern, until you name it, you can't change it. So here's where you are. You're not trading a strategy. You're managing emotional survival. And survival mode makes consistent execution impossible. Here's what working through this looks like. You start noticing when you're in survival mode, not to judge it, just to see it. I want to move this stop. Why? Because the loss feels unbearable right now. I want to exit this winner. Why? Because I need proof I was right before it reverses. I want to skip this setup. Why? Because I'm afraid of being wrong again. That's awareness. And awareness is the first step out of unconscious survival behavior. The next step is separation. You learn to separate the feeling from the action. I feel afraid, and I'm executing anyway. I feel uncomfortable holding this winner, and I'm holding to target anyway. I feel uncertain about this setup, and I'm taking it anyway. Not because the feeling goes away, but because you stop letting the feeling decide. This is hard. This is the hardest part of phase 1, because your entire nervous system is wired to avoid emotional pain, and you're asking it to execute despite pain. That's not natural. That's trained. And training takes repetition. You execute despite discomfort. Once, twice, 100 times, until your brain learns discomfort isn't danger, it's just information, and I can act despite it. That's the shift from emotional survival to disciplined execution. Mark Douglas said something most traders never internalize. You can't think your way out of survival mode. You have to execute your way out. Reading about this doesn't fix it. Understanding the pattern doesn't fix it. Only execution fixes it. Every time you execute despite fear, you're building evidence that fear isn't danger. Every time you hold despite discomfort, you're training your nervous system that discomfort is tolerable. Every time you follow your rules despite wanting to break them, you're rewiring the relationship between feeling and action. That's the work. And it's not intellectual. It's experiential. This episode isn't about becoming fearless. Fear doesn't go away in phase 1. This is about seeing that you're in survival mode and understanding that survival mode is incompatible with probabilistic execution. You can't avoid discomfort and execute a trading system. You have to choose. And right now, you're choosing survival. Every modified stop, every early exit, every skipped trade, all survival, none of it execution. The market doesn't care about your emotional survival. It only cares about execution. And until you stop prioritizing how you feel over what your system says, you'll stay stuck in phase 1. Not because you're incapable, because you're still trying to trade without discomfort. And that's not possible. Comment below. What's the last trade you modified because of how you felt? Moved a stop? Exited early? Skipped a setup? Drop what you did. One sentence. Because if you can't admit when survival mode takes over, you can't work through it.